Hello everyone. We come together today to pay our last respects, farewell and celebrate the life of Denise DOWSETT, who sadly passed away on Thursday the 15th of September. We gather in this sacred space to honour our tears and share the grief and the heartache as a result of her passing, and to say goodbye to a very special person who's much loved and respected. And we're here to offer our love and support to her sons, Paul and Peter, and their families, who were all cherished dearly by their gran, as well as her brother Alan and her extended family and many dear friends at this difficult time. We're also here to reminisce and remember the beautiful person that Denise was, and give thanks for her relationship to you and the important role that she's played in all of your lives. Well, we share a journey through many emotions as we say farewell to Denise today, and we accept the existence of these powerful emotions by recognising and valuing the love that you hold for her. And we've assembled as a family and a community to support each other through the heartbreaking process. Today we also remember Denise's husband John, who passed away in 2021 after a very impressive 64 years of marriage together. We pray for their blessed reunion in eternity, and we trust that John, along with her parents, are now lighting her way. We honour their marriage and their proudest achievements here today through their loving and adoring family. To you all, it's the love that Denise has displayed and engendered in you that will heal and nourish you in times to come and strengthen you as a family. Together you'll move forward, and our collective prayer to you is that you find hope and peace, and may today you begin the healing in our presence. On behalf of the family, I'd like to welcome everyone. Thank you for your attendance here today. My name's Rod Pianagonda. Well, today I'll read a life story tribute that has been thoughtfully and thoroughly prepared by Denise's family. Her sons Paul and Peter will then share some memories and more personal details of her life with you. We have a dedication, and at the conclusion of the service in the chapel, you're invited to join the family for refreshments in the adjoining room, offering you a chance to catch up and pay your respects. I'd now like to read the tribute prepared by the family. Denise was born in Kiama on the 30th of June 1936, the first child of Harry and Jean Hope. The young family moved from Kiama to Dapto when Denise was still a toddler. They settled here and later on welcomed another child, Alan. Denise attended Dapto Primary and then Wollongong High Schools. She left school after obtaining her intermediate certificate and then studied business college, where she became proficient in accounts and bookkeeping, shorthand and typing. Her first job was at Tallawarra Power Station, and later she secured a position at the office at Huntly Colliery. She had many friends, and together they'd all attend the dances and the halls in the area, including the Dapto Agricultural Hall and Avondale Hall. It was around that time that she met and fell in love with a young tearaway named John DOWSETT. It's fair to say that Harry and Jean weren't too impressed with their daughter's new beau, particularly when John used to hoon around town on his BSA, roaring up and down Marshall Street, chucking wheelies with Denise on the back. And in the end, though, true love wins out, and Denise and John were married on the 29th of June 1957 at Brownsville. 2 years later, they had their first child, Paul. In 1962, Peter was born and the family was complete. Denise was very proud of her boys, and as they grew, she'd take a keen interest in their school results and take them everywhere around the Illawarra for excursions and sports events. Denise was an outstanding hockey player and won many trophies. She also was very keen on tennis, and her and John used to play regularly with friends. Denise was still working at Huntly, and John had joined the police force back in 1958, and in 1970 John obtained a transfer to Yurong Creek, a tiny speck on the map between Wagga and Albury. This was a great life for the young family. Real country life has a freedom and joy which is hard to convey. Denise loved it there and made many new friends in the town and around the area. She worked at the TAB in Wagga for a time and then secured a position with a solicitor's office in Henty. She continued her passion of playing tennis and also took up squash. soon filling the house with trophies and ornaments from her success. She passed on the tennis bug to the boys and would take them to tournaments all over the Riverina and beyond. Denise honed her cooking skills with the help of the local ladies around town. Country ladies really know how to cook. She perfected the art of cooking wild ducks, no easy feat, but her main love food-wise were sweets. She regularly came up with delicious desserts, and it would be fair to say her favourite was making pavlovas and eating pavlovas. In 1974, the family moved again due to John's work, and they settled back in Dapto. Denise got administration jobs in various schools, including Mount Warrigal and Dapto Primary. She reunited with former friends and made new ones. Denise and John bought an on-site van at North Durras, and the family would spend all their holidays there, fishing, prawning, you name it. Denise perfected the art of catching beach worms, perfect for catching whiting, her favourite fish. Later on, they bought a four-wheel drive and another van and did a couple of trips throughout Australia. Around 1990, they decided they needed a change and moved to the New South Wales North Coast, Ulmurra, near Grafton, where John's brother lived. Denise again worked at the local school. They liked it there for a time, but in the end the swampy surrounds and the humidity didn't agree with them, so they opted to head for a more familiar south coast, where they settled in Narooma. Once again, Denise obtained a job at a school there. It's fair to say her skills were in high demand. They loved it down there, and the rest of the family would visit often. Plus, they were closer to Merimbula, where Paul, Fiona and the kids, Laura and Nathan, lived. They revelled in the grandkids and would often have them staying with them, filling them with food and enjoying their antics. Circumstances brought them back to Dapto after 6 years, and they built a house in Tate Avenue, Kanahooka. Eventually, climbing the internal stairs became a bit of a chore, so they sold up and bought 47 Burke Road, where they lived out their remaining years. Her and John loved making sure everyone who came to the house didn't leave hungry. Roasts were their speciality. Denise was an expert at crochet and also became proficient at cross-stitching, the evidence of which is scattered on the walls of her home. She loved watching sport, particularly the AFL, tennis, and for some reason, surfing. No one in the family surfed, so this was a bit of a mystery. Denise was a much-loved wife, mother, sister, auntie, grandmother, and great-grandmother. She worked all her life and was very proud to have done so. She was smart and curious and seemed able to master most things she tried her hand at. She virtually taught herself how to use the computer in her early 70s, just through sheer persistence. She was honest and straight as an arrow when it came to letting you know how she felt. She had an incredible amount of friends and was extremely loyal to them, remaining friends with most of them her entire life. Denise enjoyed a full and happy life. She and John experienced many changes, but the love for each other and their family remained constant. Her family was everything to her, and she would back them and fiercely defend them whenever they needed. She was quick with a kiss and a hug and support and a supportive word to anyone who needed it. The family are devastated she is gone, but they can at least have some pain eased knowing that she's been reunited with John on his BSA, tearing through the streets of Dapto and Avondale with the wind in their hair and the road in front of them. Well done. Beautiful tribute. Denise's son Paul will now deliver his personal tribute to his mother.
Thank you. Okay, my name's Paul anyway, Mum's eldest. So on behalf of my wife Fiona and I sort of want to tell you what Mum meant to us, what kind of a person she was, and tell you a couple of stories about Mum, some of which are pretty funny, I can tell you. So In the 60s, Mum, Dad, my brother and I, we grew up in Western Avenue, just near Dapto High School. We had a great family life in those days. We were well looked after, and there always seemed to be something to do as a kid. Mum would take us to the pool, our footy games, athletics, carnivals, and she also loved to go shopping. Unfortunately, sometimes she took us with her. If you went with her, it was more like an endurance test. I was pretty fit in those days, like all kids. And I could run around the footy field and Wollongong Showground for ages, but there's no way I could keep up with her when it came to the shops. I just remember following around behind her, whinging and whining about when we could go home, but she just kept saying, "Oh, we just got to go and have a look over here, one more shop. Won't be long." More times than I can remember. At other times we'd be home in the morning and she'd say, "I'm just ducking down to the shops." About 8 hours later she'd be back home after a trip to Miranda Fair in Sydney. Later on I remember going to the supermarket with her. I felt really sorry for the people who set up the meat displays in there. The displays were usually immaculate with all the stuff in neat rows and nothing out of place. That was until Mum got there. After she checked it all out and bought something or not, there was total carnage with packets and stuff all over the place and upside down. In 1970, Dad was transferred to Eurong Creek, as Rod said there. She really enjoyed it out there, Mum. It was a small town, but it was very social and they fitted in really well. They made a lot of lifelong friends there. Mum, she'd forever be taking us to the pool, our footy games, tennis lessons and tournaments all over the joint. And at home she honed her skills cooking on the old wood combustion stove. And then at some stage she started making pavlovas. I can't remember how many she made, but a lot. And I remember looking at them and I used to think to myself, they don't look real crash hot because they're all cracked. But Mum reckons the bigger the cracks, the better, because she could fill them up full of cream. So she always had a sweet tooth and she really loved her cakes. In 1974, Dad transferred back to Port Kembla. It was actually on his birthday, so it was on the 9th of May, I remember. So we left Eurong Creek and we returned back to Marshall Street in Dapto. I remember Mum shedding a tear on the drive back. She obviously loved our time out there and they went back for plenty of visits. So not long later, Dad was actually transferred to Dapto and we lived in the old police house in Osborne Street, which is the car park around the back of you now. And at some stage, I can't remember what year it was, but Mum and Dad bought a van down at North Durras near Bateman's Bay. We had some fantastic times down there with our family and friends. They also bought another van and did some trips to the Northern Territory in Western Australia. Dad reckoned it took a couple of months to get there, but only a day or two to get home with Mum driving. She never liked to be too far away from home, wherever it was, so when it was time to head home, she bolted. They had a couple of things they really liked doing as a couple. They used to love going out to the clubs. So Dad, he'd go there and, of course, have a few beers with whoever was around. Well, Mum loved to have a go on the pokies. Unfortunately for her, when Dad ran out of people to talk to, he would eventually come over to Mum and help her play. So that really didn't go down too well because every time he helped, she lost. She did have a great sense of humour though. I remember one night they went to Huntley Bowling Club up the road here. When it was time to go home, Dad had a brilliant idea, although I think his judgment might have been clouded for some reason, maybe the hour of the night and something else. But anyway, they left the door of the club and Dad said to Mum, "Get on my back, I'll piggyback you back home," because I only lived across the road and up a bit. So down the ramp they go until Dad fell face down with Mum on top of him. So Mum could see the funny side of the whole thing, but Dad had to stay at home for a week or so no one could see his battle scars. It took Mum and Dad a while before they eventually settled down in Dapto for good. Before that, they spent a fair amount of time in and around Narooma and Dalmooney. They also spent some time up at Ulmara near Grafton. I remember that house where they lived in, it was raised above the ground because the area was prone to flooding. But there was always one thing that stuck in my mind about that joint. When you went to the toilet there and lifted up the lid, there were frogs swimming around in the water. It wasn't a one-off thing, they were there all the time, so it wasn't too bad for the guys, but the girls were pretty nervous. And I don't know why, but I think that could have been one of the reasons they left Ulmara. In 1985, our daughter Laura was born, and in 88, Nathan was born. So Mum and Dad were very proud grandparents. Laura and Nathan spent plenty of time with them at Narooma where they lived. They were obviously spoilt rotten with all sorts of food, slices and the like. Mum and Dad always kept them entertained. They used to take them down to the beach for a swim, while Mum caught beach worms for the next fishing trip. And they made plenty of trips down to see us down at Merimbula. Later on, Mum and Dad would see Laura graduate at uni, see her attestation parade at the police academy, and Nathan joining the Navy and progressing through the ranks. At one time, Nathan was on a ship for 6 months or so over in the Middle East. Anyway, he was surprised to get a package, and Mum had actually made him a caramel slice and sent it over there to him. So they're so proud of those kids and what they achieved. Down the track, Laura married Adam and Nathan married Jasmine, and they had children of their own. Mum and Dad were absolutely thrilled, of course. She was always asking how the kids were going. Mum was smart, honest, hard-working, and always loyal to her family and friends. As a family, we knew she loved us all. Because she always told us, she always let us know. She never complained too much, even though her health was failing. She'd rather focus on how everyone was doing and checking that we were all okay. Before going, I want to thank my brother Peter for caring for Mum. It hasn't been easy for him, but Mum would have been lost without his care and support. And thanks to Al as well for taking her shopping and to her appointments. I've got one line to go, I'll be right. These last 18 months have been terrible. Losing Dad last April and now Mum. But at least they're back together now. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Beautiful, mate. Our next acknowledgement is from Peter.
The thing I remember growing up in my family was how much we enjoyed each other's company. We were a close family, just the four of us, and we had fun. Mum and Dad never took life too seriously. They just rolled with the punches and enjoyed themselves whenever they could. They loved us to bits, and we loved and respected them immensely. They gave us everything we needed. We'd whinge and whinge about what we wanted, and somehow they found a way to make it happen. Not always, though. I remember us asking for a mini bike for months and months. And Paul and I even carved out a track in the paddock behind the police station. But they drew the line there. Probably a wise decision. We would have killed ourselves on the first day, I think. Just before we moved to Yarron Creek, we got a little pup, a miniature long-haired dachshund that Mum named Prince. He was really given to the family, but he was definitely Mum's dog. A beautiful little fella you couldn't help but love, and we spent many happy years with him. He was, however, somewhat confused with his place in the world, especially when it came to the opposite sex. He just wanted to be with us. It was very sad when he finally left us. Mum said she would never get another dog, The heartbreak was just too much. Another pet Mum had was a feral cockatoo with the highly original name of Cocky. Mum adored him and used to wrap him up and cuddle him in her arms, and he'd just lie there content. She even taught him to speak a few words. He only loved Mum, he barely tolerated Dad, and he hated anyone else. I thought she should have called him Dr. Jekyll, because when he was let loose in the backyard, he became Mr. Hyde. He'd attack anything that moved, and if it didn't move, well, he'd attack it anyway. He'd chew up the lawnmower, tear up beer cans, and hop after any bare leg he saw, intent on causing carnage. Usually that unsuspecting victim was me. He just didn't like the cut of my jib from the get-go and proceeded to attack me whenever he had the chance. He'd even hide from me, waiting for the perfect ambush. After I was left traumatised and bleeding, he'd just turn his head to the side and say, "Hello, Cocky." When even Mum agreed he had finally become too much to handle, a friend from the country agreed to take him, much to my and the neighbours' relief. A relief to all concerned when he left town, as Slim Dusty used to sing. As you've already heard, Mum would drive us for miles for footy games and tennis tournaments. A nice memory for me was she would always bring a thermos with her. In the summer, it would be ice-cold raspberry cordial, and in the winter, cream of chicken soup, my favourite. I still remember drinking out of that little white plastic cup. Such was her dedication. In 1972, I was lucky enough to make the state championships in Sydney. In those days, the team would travel by train from Wagga. 5 players and the manager, no parents. We'd be billeted with families in Sydney. Mum drove up separately and spent a week in Sydney watching me play. I think there might have been a few shopping trips to Grace Brothers at Broadway thrown in there as well. I was lucky enough to make the team the following year as well, this time to Newcastle. Once again, Mum drove up. Nothing was too much trouble when it came to her boys. I moved in to help Mum early this year. I obviously knew she loved sport. But how many games of football can you watch in a weekend? AFL and NRL plus all the footy panel shows. I love footy, but even this was a bit much for me. She supported Collingwood and the Canterbury Bulldogs and would really get into the games. She'd fire up if one of them did something wrong, believe me. Luckily, the players on TV couldn't hear what was coming from a lounge room in Dapto. Sometimes I'd get up in the middle of the night, 2 a.m, and she'd be there, sitting there watching the tennis. 2 no-name players in a 3rd round match in Peru. I'd just shake my head and say, "What are you doing?" She says, "Oh, just watching this. But she loved it, and that's what made her happy. And as long as she was happy, that was all that mattered to me. Finally, I'd just like to thank everyone for coming today to pay their respects to a wonderful lady who's a beautiful mum. We loved her dearly. Mum, you're an incredible lady. We love you and always will. Rest in peace."
Thanks, Peter. Well done. Thank you both for your beautiful personal contributions, as well as Mum's beautiful life story that you put together. And well done, Peter, for being there for your mother to support her and the care that you offered over the last 9 months. I'd like to dedicate this quote by Roy T. Bennett to Peter and to everybody who commits to caring for others. He said, "Learn to light a candle in the darkest moments of someone's life. Be the light that helps others see. It is what gives life its deepest significance." Well done, mate. Well, the significance of Denise's life and her relationship to you is unique to you both. And these are the experiences that create the special memories that stay with you forever. They're also the basis of why we grieve, because it's those unique memories that are most cherished and sadly missed. And though no longer a visible part of your lives, Denise will always remain in your hearts and minds through the beautiful and loving influence she's had on you and the very special and important role that she's played in all of your lives. And she will continue to play a role throughout your life as a consequence of the morals, the behaviours that she's instilled in all of you, with her boundless love, her kindness, her consideration for others, her helpful nature, her devotion and commitment to and pride in her family. Denise lived her life to the fullest. Her principal happiness and her personal accomplishments have come from her loving, caring, giving and sharing with her ever-growing family. The inspiring qualities that she and John displayed are fairly typical of their generation, often referred to as the silent generation. They were a generation of people that elevated and rebuilt the world after the chaos of war, and they did it by representing the worthy characteristics of discipline, upholding of standards, and an appreciation for the simplicities of life. They valued honesty and trustworthiness, ideals that were adopted by their need to rely on one another. And they focused on working hard to achieve their goals and provide for their families without making a fuss or the need for praise. And yet they were always grateful for what little they had. They proudly embodied the principles of decency, generosity, and the respect for others, and they always lived their lives with dignity, reverence, and the pride of achievement. Denise has implanted all of those principles within your heart. The admirable qualities and the fine examples that Denise has shown you are gifts that you should all be very proud of. We should all aspire to the principles and the standards that she possessed and reflected to others. Honour her memory, keep it safe so that she may continue to light the way in your life and guide you towards healing the pain of her loss. Her beautiful and honourable achievements we recognise, bear witness to, and record for posterity here today, so that her fine example will never be forgotten. Our dedication today is a poem to honour Denise's vital and inspiring role of mother, the proud legacy that she created and her eternal memory. It's an anonymous poem called Your Mother. Your mother is always with you. She's the whisper of the leaves as you walk down the street. She's the smell of certain foods you remember, flowers you pick, the fragrance of life itself. She's the cool hand on your brow when you're not feeling well. She's your breath in the air on a cold winter's day. She's the sound of the rain that lulls you to sleep, the colours of a rainbow. She is Christmas morning. Your mother lives inside your laughter. She's the place you came from, your first home, and she's the map you follow with every step you take. She's your first love, your first friend, and your first critic. But nothing on earth can separate you. Not time, not space, not even death. Loss of life brings us together. It opens us up to the humanity we all share. It stirs within us the deepest heartfelt emotions. It deepens our appreciation of life, how fragile it is, and the importance of living each moment with love, respect, and thanks. And Denise did just that. Her loving, caring, and generous nature and her positive attitude and her enjoyment of life is inspirational. Her passing invites us to reflect upon our own lives and values, and for that reason we should resolve in Denise's honour to live a fuller and more meaningful life of our own. Once again, thank you everyone for your attendance here today, and a reminder that refreshments will be served in the adjoining room, and you're welcome to join the family and share some memories and stories of Denise. Well, beloved Denise, it's time for us to say goodbye and farewell. Thank you for your love, your friendship, and your loyalty. Thank you for your smile and the times you laughed. Thank you for your kindness and care. Thank you for just being you. We return your body to the elements with great reverence, grateful for the time we've spent together. May perpetual light shine upon Denise. May we remember to mind every memory that she brought. May the stars whisper her wishes into the light. May we revere her presence and her beauty forever. Let the memory and thoughts of Denise stir deep gratitude that she lived and that she has touched your life. Let her name be spoken freely and often and with great honour and respect. She'll always be alive in the love you carry for her in your hearts. May your grief surrender to great pride and gratification. Rest in peace, Denise DOWSETT.
A candy-colored clown they call the Sandman tiptoes to my room every night just to sprinkle stardust and to whisper, go to sleep, everything is all right. I close my eyes